Hello guys, welcome to another video. Today we're going to be working on a P-51. Keep it nice, sweet, and simple. So let's start by opening our Blender up. Alright, so we have our cube. You're going to want to open a new tab in Chrome or Edge or whatever you use. And search P-51 Blueprint. Alright, so you're going to look on here. Find one that looks decent. What we're looking for is the top, the front, and the side. Those are the three views that we really need. This one looks like it should work. We even have the bottom there if you want to add details that are present on the bottom. So what we're going to do is right click, save image as, and we're just going to save that to downloads. Alright, we can exit that out. Alrighty, so we're going to go to our downloads here. Here it is. So we're going to go into our Blender. We're going to press 3 on our numpad. That's going to take us to the side view. Then we're going to take our image right here and we're just going to drag it over and drop it. And now it's there. We can close that out. We don't need it anymore. Alright, that is everything we need from outside of Blender. So now what we're going to do is we're going to press, I'm using 2.79 hotkeys, so my hotkeys may be a little bit different. But what you're going to do is go into, what's this mode? Wireframe mode, that's what it's called. So for me, I press Z. And what we're going to do is line this up with the side. The nose is facing left. Whenever you press 3, the front is to the left. And we'll check this later. I'll show you how we do that. So we're going to scale this way up to the scale we want it. As you can see, we can't see through it right now, but we actually want to be able to see a little bit behind it so we're not limited. So on the right over here, if you click on this little square with the triangle, and you click transparency right here, I usually put that to 0.5. Makes it a little bit darker, because it's mixing with the background there. Alright, now we don't want it in perspective view. So if we look around, we can't see it, only when we're here. So drag this over. So we're going to copy this, Control C, and then we're going to press Control V, click the new one. We're going to press R, Z, and then 90. And what we just did is we rotated it around the Z axis by 90 degrees. So now that we got that, we can press 1, go into our front view here. We'll take the front picture of the aircraft and line it up as best as we can. So I'm looking at the line here on the cowling and the rudder. And then I am trying to get the cross as close to the center of the where the spinner is there. Alright, so now that we got that, we're going to Control C this and Control V again. We're going to have a copy. We're going to rotate it on the X axis this time. So you're going to press R, then X, and then you're going to press 90. Now you can press 7 on the keyboard. Now we're looking at it from the top. Now, before we start this, we're going to press 3 again, and we're going to click our cube. So we need some reference points so we can actually get everything lined up correctly. So here's how we're going to do this. We're going to take this top portion here. On the left, I'm going to press this move button right here with the arrows, so I can use arrows to move it around. It's just what I'm used to. So what we're going to do is we're going to put this point right here where our windshield hits the cowling, right there. And then on the bottom, we're just going to drag this to where the bottom of this intake is. That should be the lowest point on the aircraft. And then for the front, we're just going to extrude it a little bit. You don't want to equal to this because we want to be able to know which square is in front when we press 7, which is what we're going to do now. So now we're looking at it from the top. So we know that the front is facing in the down direction. It's just a good way to verify because I've gotten it backwards before and it's not fun. So we're going to line this up right in the middle. We know this this first line right here should be right on that line right there where the cowling and the windshield meet. So if we press 1, we can now move this respectively. Bottom of the cowling right there. Now it's not going to be perfect. We can see this isn't lined up perfectly with that, but that's okay. We'll work around that. So now that we got all this set up, I'm going to drag these out of the way. So you can just drag this one up, drag this guy back, and then we can press 1 and drag this one to the side. Perfect. Alright, so now we're going to delete our cube because we no longer need it, and what we're going to start off with is a cylinder. Alright, so you don't want to press anything yet. Bottom left, you're going to see add cylinder. Click on that, and we want to change the vertices because we're making a fairly simplistic aircraft. So let's go with 6. It should be, or let's make it 8. Let's go with 8. I usually like even numbers for this. Alright, so what we're gonna do now, just so we don't accidentally keep pressing these blueprints in the background, up here by filter, top right, we're gonna come here and we're gonna click this arrow, and this basically allows you to select what you can select in the scene and what you can't. So we want to deselect all these images, and yeah, we don't want to be able to move the light around either, so we'll turn that off. Very cool. Now we're gonna take our cylinder, press R, rotate it 90 degrees, scale it down a little bit, and I'm gonna, by pressing S to scale down, and then I'm gonna press G, and I'm gonna drag it right about there. That looks nice. I'm going to start on this, where the cowling starts coming up right here. So I'm going to select, I'm pressing, alright, let me explain what I'm doing here. So in wireframe mode, if you click C, you get this little circle, and if you click and drag, it will highlight everything within that circle. And because I'm in wireframe mode, it's also selecting what's on the other side. That's important because if I didn't do that in wireframe mode, let me show you what happens. Just select this, and you drag it, well, it didn't select these 3. And that's how you get a really screwed up model. So, wireframe mode, C. I'm going to scale this in a little bit, drag it down, try to line it up, get the top vertex here, bottom here. And then I'm going to press S here as well. Just a little bit, not much. Alright, if we select this front face here and we press E, drag it all the way up to where the spinner is here. Then we're just gonna scale this in, drag it up, forward a little bit. Okay. So then what I'm gonna do now is we want to be able to get this line to follow this a little bit better than that. So we're going to do Control R while in edit mode, and you're going to get this yellow line. You want your mouse towards the bottom of it, so if I drag it too far away, it disappears, and if I drag it up here, it's going to make a line there. So what we're doing is we're adding a control loop, is what it's called. So it's basically another line of these vertices right here that we can use. So I want to add about 4, so you just use your scroll wheel, or you could type a number on the numpad to how many of these you want. Click once, and now you can drag it around to where you want to. I want to keep it centered, so I'm going to press 0 on the numpad, 0 offset, and then press enter. Alright, now that we have these, I'm going to start one by one, scale it up, drag it to where I want it. Just try to get it to follow the bottom and the top as well as possible, just by pressing S. I'm going to drag this up and this up. That looks better. Okay. So now what we're going to do before we continue is deal with this little intake here. So how we're going to do that is we're going to add another control loop right where that intake should be. Just scale that. Scale that in, drag it up, just like that. This should actually probably be up a little. Drag that up. There's a lot of eyeballing involved in this process here. So I'm going to add another control loop right about there. I want it fairly close. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab, so I'm going to grab these two right here. Just drag them. Same on the other side. Sorry, those three. Drag them down to right back here. Okay. Now that we have that, we're going to come back here to the back section. I'm going to just extrude this all the way back to where the rudder begins here. I'm just going to scale that down, drag it up a little bit. So for this, what we're going to do is we're going to make this rudder out of a cube, the elevator, wings, those are all going to be separate pieces. So we want this to more or less be right where we want the rudder to start, which should be along this line here. Let's add a control loop right here. Scale that up a little, just like that. See, we're not going to do the intake yet. So act like the intake is in here. Just try to get a line that goes from here to here with as much flow, I guess you could say, as possible. Alright, that looks nice. So now what we're going to do is we're going to select these four faces right here where the intake would be. Okay, we're going to press E and we're going to press Z. We're just going to extrude those straight down. And then I'm going to press S and Z. Kind of flatten that out a little bit. Cool. I'm going to select these vertices here. Drag this up so there's a small lip here, and I'll show you how to take care of that in a moment. Grab that guy, drag it down. We're just doing the same thing. I'm going to add a control loop, control R once again. Drag that down. And drag this down. I'm actually going to take, I'm going to show you another tool that I use. If you press B, it's going to bring up these two lines, and it acts just like when you highlight something on your desktop. If you click and drag, it will highlight everything in there. So I want to select that row there. I'm going to press G twice. Oh, doesn't seem that worked. I take that back. I'm just going to use the arrow and drag it back. What tapping G twice does, instead of just freely being able to move around like this, if you press it twice, it will go along the edges. So it kind of moves along the mesh, and that can be really useful. Alright. So I'm going to select, let's see, actually I'm not going to do that yet. Alright, we're going to deal with this lip back here. So, because we want this to flow, I'm going to select the three vertices right here in the lower portion. I'm just going to take this green arrow, drag it forward a little bit, drag it down. I'm actually going to add a control loop here. I'm going to press S and Y, and change that to 0. And I just scaled that down to 0 and just made all those straight. Another very useful tool. So something else, we're going to deal with the top of the aircraft now. So we're going to press 7. Let's see, I don't know. Did I drag that? Yeah, okay. So let me show you if you did what I did. You can see that this blueprint is actually it's on top of our object, so we really can't see it all that well. We want it the other way around. So I'm going to make it selectable again over here by just turning those back on, and I'm just going to drag it down below the model. Turn those back off. And there we are. So this is the other step that I kind of overlooked, but we can take care of it now. So what we're going to do is we're going to go by each control loop, and we're going to press S, and we're going to press X, and we're going to choose one side to scale it to, because most cases one side is just a little bit off than the other, and if you try to line them both off, your plane is going to be doing like a zigzag thing, and it's not going to look good. So just choose one side. I choose the right here, and I'm going to align those on the right. And what I'm doing is I'm scaling only on the x-axis by pressing X. And that way, if I didn't press X, then I'd be scaling vertically as well, and we don't want to mess with anything we did vertically. So we're just going to go control loop by control loop. Let me show you another very useful tool. So if you hold Alt and you click an edge, it will highlight that entire control loop. So for example, if I wanted to highlight that one, just hold Alt, click on that, hold Alt, click on that. It's also very useful. So for this one, we have two separate control loops. This is a separate loop here. So we're going to have to just highlight this normally, press C, make sure everything's highlighted, scale it in. I'll just do that for the rest of it. Alright, get the back end here. There you go. Okay, now let's deal with this. Because my camera's a little offset, to make this easier, I'm going to press period on the numpad, and that'll center my view on whatever I have selected. Okay, so we want this to be more or less straight coming down. So I'm going to select all of these vertices here, same on the other side. We're going to press S, X, scale that out a little bit. There we go, that looks better. And then I'm actually going to select these vertices right here. Scale those in just a tad. There we go, I like that. Alright, so now we're going to do this front portion right here. That's a little bit of a lip, I guess you could say. So what we're going to do is highlight these two faces here. And we're going to, first what we're going to do is we're going to press I. Sorry, got ahead of myself there. Press I and just drag in a little bit, and what that does is it creates an inset face on whatever you have selected. So once we have that, okay, and then I'm also going to highlight these four vertices here, and I'm going to drag those down because that should be more or less flat, and I'm going to drag that down a little bit. There you go, that looks better. Okay, so we're going to select the new faces that we inset here. And what we can do is we can actually extrude those back, give us a little hollow section. Highlight all the faces on the outside here. I'm just holding shift and clicking all the faces here. Press E, extrude. And then what we can do is press R, rotate it to get that angle, press G, drag it down a little bit. That looks nice. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of this little bend here, because that bothers me a little bit. These I'm going to drag down a little bit. Perfect. Alright, so we got our basic airframe shape here. It's time to start working on the wings. Alright, so I'm going to do Shift A. We're going to select the cube, scale that guy in just like so. And then, yep, it's centered. If for some reason your 3D cursor was not centered, so it spawned, I guess you could say spawned, it got put out here. We can come up here. There's going to be a little arrow on the right side here. Click that, go into item, and then this is your location of the item based on the X, Y, and Z axis. So the X-axis controls left and right. We'll just make it simple. It controls to the left and the right of the aircraft we're making. So we want that to be centered. If we just click on the value, set it to 0, it's going to put it right smack in the middle. So now that we have that, we'll press 3, go back to our side view here. We're going to create a simple airfoil shape. So I'm going to scale this up vertically a little bit. We're going to bring this forward. We're not going to worry about the blueprint yet. We'll deal with that later. We're just making our airfoil. So we're going to extrude this forward, press S and Z. It's important to only scale on the Z axis so everything is lined up. What direction is that? Y. Lined up on the Y axis. Sorry, I had a brain freeze there. We'll extrude the back much further than the front. We're going to scale this down. And just to give you a reference of what an airfoil looks like, in case you don't know, you can see this sort of oval shape here. That's what an airfoil looks like. So it's usually a little bit shorter in the front. The midsection or the tallest point is usually forward on the shape there. So I'm going to add a control loop here. Scale that guy up. I'm going to make this a little bit more round. Then I'll add one here. There we go. I like that. I think we're good there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to select everything we have in the front. I'm going to I'm going to select the whole object, sorry. Press S, and we're going to press Y. I'm going to scale that up, drag it here. If we press 7, what we can do is press S, Y. What I'm looking at is I'm getting the front to line up with the first part of the wing here. Same with the back. The back, we could just drag that back a little bit like that. That looks nice. Okay. So now, because we don't want to have to do this twice, what we're going to use is the mirror modifier. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a control loop right in the middle. It's important to make sure this is perfectly centered and not offset. So we're just going to press enter twice. Don't even use your mouse so you don't move it around. And then I'm going to press B. And I'm going to highlight everything on the left here. Don't highlight the center, keep the center just left. And we're going to press X. And we're going to delete vertices since we're in the vertice mode. Okay, now that we have that, select our cube. On the right here, if we click this little wrench, go to add modifier, mirror. So what this does is, I'll just pull it out to show you here. It replicates everything we do on one side, and it's mirrored around either an object you select or the origin. So in this case, the origin is centered, so there is real no point in selecting an object. However, if your origin wasn't, but you still wanted it mirrored on, let's say, our fuselage, you just take this little dropper button, click on the fuselage, and now it's mirrored on that. So if I drag this apart and then move this around, the origin can move around, but it's still mirrored on this object here. So I'm going to undo all that. There we go, back to where we were. So I'm going to select all the vertices on the right side if we press 1 and go to our front perspective. What I'm going to do is I'm going to extrude this out to this first line here. And I'm going to press S and Z and scale it up to the thickness that we want there. So if I highlight this, I'm going to extrude it straight out to the wingtip, scale it on the Z axis, just scale it down to about the same thickness as the wingtip. I'm going to press G and just drag it to that line. Alright, this is clearly not the shape of the wing that we want, so we're going to press 7. Go into our edit mode here. I'm just going to select each vertex and just drag it up to the line there. I'm going to add a control loop right here so I can get that little slant there. So for the front here, I'm going to select everything back to where it starts decreasing in size. Otherwise it just starts to look a little bit funky, and you want to maintain the same airfoil shape. Add a control loop right there. Drag that guy back. And I'm going to scale it down a little bit on the wingtip here. Okay. So I'm going to select everything on the wingtip here. I'm going to press E, just extrude it out to the wingtip, and I'm just going to press S. Scale that in. Press 1. Add a control loop, scale it up just a little bit. Get the right amount of curvature there. That looks nice. Press 7. Try to round this out a little bit. There we go. That looks decent. So we'll stick with that. Elevator is the same process, so of adding a cube, creating our airfoil shape. In this case, we can actually see it decently. Try that forward a little bit, extrude that, scale it down. Okay. So now that we have an elevator done here, this is an example of the drawing being off, so everything in the front is nice and perfect, and then if we come back here, the tail is offset, so you just kind of have to eyeball it and kind of go with it. So we're going to do the same thing with the mirror modifier. I'll run through it again, add a control loop in the center here. We're going to press B, highlight all the vertices on the left, press X, click vertices since we are in vertice mode, and then we're going to come over here to our modifiers, the wrench, add a modifier, mirror. And then I'm going to select everything here by pressing Alt and just clicking on that. I guess that didn't work. I take that back. I'm just going to press B and highlight everything on the right side. So I'm going to extrude that straight out to right here, just before the tip of the elevator there. Take this, drag it back to right about there. That goes there. This comes back. And if I press 1, highlight everything, scale it down a little bit. We'll extrude it out here. Eventually out to just about there. And then I can scale that up. Give it a little bit of a round edge to it. Alright, there we go. So back, I'm going to add a control loop here, and I'm going to take this back section. We're just going to highlight this back face and scale it on the x-axis. Just want it to be more narrow for our rudder to attach to it. So now we're going to deal with the rudder. So let's add a cube here. Sorry, I had to take a drink there. Alright. So we're going to scale it down. It's also sort of an airfoil shape. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this to the forward portion where the rudder is. Then I'm going to scale this on the x-axis to about how wide it should be. I'm going to scale this in, make a rounded edge here. Alright, so we end up with this. So if you press 3, I'm going to, so we'll start at the top. How about that? Take this back section, just extrude it straight back, scale it on the x-axis, make the whole thing thinner by scaling it on the x-axis. There we go. If we press 1, get a good feel for how wide it should actually be. So just extrude that down. And I am going to extrude it down. We'll just extrude it all the way down to the bottom of the rudder control surface here. Because this piece needs to include everything right here and everything up here. Alright. So I'm going to select all these vertices here, just drag those forward, and add a control loop right here where the fuselage is, just slightly shy of the fuselage, so just under it. Just drag that guy straight forward like that. This looks really weird, but trust me, it will look better in a moment. Just for the mesh flowing a little bit. Move that forward, add another control loop here, just drag it back to where it needs to be. I'm actually going to rotate this vertically just a little bit. Rotate that vertically. This guy, rotate it up. Drag that guy back a little. And then I'm going to come up here, select everything on top, just extrude that up. Scale that back, and we want to scale that in a little bit as well. Okay, now we have to do the back section, so we're just going to make sure all these vertices are in line with the back. Because this is straight, mostly, I'm going to select all these vertices right here, actually. Press S, press Y, and press 0. And number lock off. Alright, there we go. So I'm going to rotate this to about the angle of the rudder here. Drag it on back. Just like that. And now I'm going to Control R and create a control loop. And press S, Y, and 0 just to make it straight. Make sure it doesn't overlap anything up top here. If it does, you might have to move a thing or two around. Drag that up, add a couple control loops down here to get this curvature. Add one more here. There we go, we have a nice rudder here. I think I can round that off a little bit more. And see, I can scale this guy in a little bit. just so it's kind of within the constraints of the fuselage here. Flatten that out a little bit. There we go. So not too bad. So now what we have to do is cut out the cockpit as simply as we can. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a control loop right at the front and right at the back, which is right here. And then what we can do is select all these faces. What we can do is just press E, extrude it down, press S, Z, and 0. Flatten it out. There you go. We have a nice cut out cockpit there. Alright. Actually, I'm going to do something real quick so we have some sort of thickness in the walls there. If we do this and we press I and just inset it just a tad, and then do the same thing, extrude it down, and then press S, Y, 0 to flatten that out. Now we have some nice walls there, I guess you could say. Alright, so I'm going to show you how to do the sort of rounded canopy portion right here in the front. So I'm going to add 2 control loops right where I want that to be. That's about the thickness I want. We'll just select these 2 faces here. And then I'm going to press 1 and extrude those straight up. Add a control loop in the center of those. And then I'm going to select this guy right here. I'm just going to rotate that about negative 100 degrees. And then on the left here, it's going to be rotated 100 degrees. Select both of those. Scale this in on the x-axis, bring them closer together, just like that. Rotate these to where they need to be. In the top left, it shows me how much I'm rotating it, so that's how I'm marrying these. You can also do the same thing we did with the wing, add a mirror modifier. I'm not doing it just because I feel this is a little bit faster. 50 degrees. Alright. So we need to connect these 2 together. I'm going to show you how we do this. Select both of these faces that we want connected. Delete them by pressing X and then faces. And then we're going to go into our edge select mode. What we're going to do is we're going to select 2 edges that we want connected. So I'm going to start with the 2 bottom ones here. And if you press F on your keyboard, it will create a face between the 2. So if we just go edge by edge here, we just sealed that up. So I'm going to add a couple control loops here. Get them to get the shape I'm looking for. Just making it a little bit more round. Okay, if we press 3, I'm going to select all these vertices here. I'm going to tilt them forward a little bit. Drag it down. Okay, now we need to flatten this front section out a little bit, so we select the vertices here on the front. We don't want to mess with the very front here because we want that to be a perfect circle. Just select them, drag it down a little bit, drag these ones right here down the most, and then select the whole bundle right there and drag it up. Very nice. Alright. So what I'm going to do is add a control loop here, drag it to make that 0.5, make this 0.5. So we have equivalent on both sides. Select our faces there and extrude them. Press 3. We'll just put those right about where we want them. So I'm going to flatten these out here because they all should be in line with each other. So press S, press Y, and 0. Just rotate it. Do the same with the back. S, Y, 0. Put that where I want it. Very nice. Drag that down just a little bit. Make that just clip into the fuselage here. At a control point in the center of both of these. Just drag it forward like that. And what we can do is, oh, didn't mean to do that. Select these two, just drag them in a little bit. There we go. So now what we need is our spinner. So what we can do is press Shift A, add another cylinder. We'll just leave it at 8. Keep everything the same. Rotate it by 90 degrees. Drag it up to where our nose is here. Scale that up. What we want is it to be close, but not completely perfect. I'm just gonna inset that a little bit. That looks nice. That's close enough. So we're gonna do the same thing we did with the fuselage. I'm gonna take this front and make it the very front of the spinner. So we're just gonna scale that in, add control loops, and scale it out until we get a roundness that we like. There we go. Alright, so if you wanted to, I'll show you how shade smooth works. If you wanted to smooth this out a little bit, select the object you want to smooth. For me, I want to smooth this wing out. Up here, go to Object, click Shade Smooth. Now you're going to get some weird shadows right now because it's trying to smooth a 90-degree angle. So we're going to come down to this little green triangle on the right side here. Then we're going to open normals, which should be closed by default. Click auto smooth, and I usually set that to about 45 degrees. So anything that's 45 degrees or under, it's going to smooth out. So we can do that for all of these actually. Fuselage looks kind of weird that way, so I'll just leave that off for the fuselage. If you want to really function well, you need to add a little bit more detail to it. But anyways, that's how you make your basic airplane in Blender. Hope you all learned something, enjoyed it. Leave a comment, sub if you want to see more of these sort of videos. I also do time lapses, and I've also been thinking about streaming some modeling, so if you guys would be interested in watching that sort of stuff, write that down in the comments. And with that, I'll see you all later.